Good evening, everyone. My name is Rudy Page of Making Connections Work. I'm very pleased this evening to welcome Dr. Donald Palmer. And tonight's topic will be around immune system, our immune system, understanding our immune system. Welcome, Donald.
No, thank you, Rudy. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to you and everyone listening. Thank you.
Thanks. So, Donald, what is our immune system? What is our natural immune system?
So this is a really important question because we've been hearing a lot of what natural is. From an immunological point of view, it's basically what naturally exists. So it's your immune system is defined in two parts. And what I'm going to do, Rudy, if you don't mind, I'm going to share the screen shortly just to provide a bit of, some slides for the audience, because I know sometimes pictures can say more. But think of the natural immune system is defined that doesn't require to be sensitized or be stimulated by the antigen or by a virus or by a bacteria. So it's what you naturally possess, okay? We sometimes refer to this as innate or natural, okay? I'm gonna share my screen and let's see if we can get to this. So you what I really want to focus on, and Rudy, hopefully you can see this, germs can cause infectious diseases.
Yeah, clearly.
So it's really important we understand some of these terminologies that we see floating around. And I know the general public sometimes are confused by terminology. Immunology is a really complicated field. You have to remember the white cell was only really discovered in the 1930s, 1940s. So from a scientific point of view, that's really quite young. So there's stuff that we don't know. I wanted to put this slide in because we say germs can cause infectious diseases. And I put this slide in because when people were looking at diseased tissue, that was the field of pathology, okay? So an organism that causes disease or causes damage to tissue is known as a pathogen, because not all microorganisms causes disease, okay? Because what we call the gut microbe or microbiota, we've got a lot of bacteria that lining the gut that play an important role, and I'll come to that in a moment. So when we talk about immunity and what is immunity, it's really protection from diseases. And our immune system, and I've been studying our immune system for 30 odd years, and I think it's a remarkable immune system. And our immune system is really designed to provide protection. And there are what we call various layers. This slide here, I've just put it in to remind folks how infections can occur. So the skin is what we call one of our natural defenses. We often refer to it as the front line of defense, okay? And it's when you breach the skin that it can cause problems. And there's various ways microorganisms can get inside our body, because that's what they need to do to get inside our bodies to cause harm. They can do it if your skin gets cut, and so it can, get in. It can get in by contaminated food, like salmonella, that's food poisoning. Or one of the most common ways is through the aerosol, okay? Through what we call the nasal pharynx system. Flu is a perfect example, and currently we talk about COVID. But to the question around natural immunity, this is a slide that I just want to spend a minute or so. Like I said, our natural immune system is one that exists that does not require to be stimulated by antigen. So it's already there and it's already doing a job of protection. Okay, so for example, the skin is an important barrier. The mucus that actually lines both our guts and indeed our lungs, the cilia hair that's present, that's all part of what we call our natural defenses. Even the tears in your eyes actually contain factors that can destroy microbes. Even the sweat gland produces factors that can destroy microbes. So this is all part of what we call our natural defenses. And this is evolutionary important, by the way, because when we now talk about when our immune system responds to a foreign antigen, because basically that's how our immune system works. Anything that's foreign, it will destroy. So what's really important here is once our immune system, once all those, the front line of defense. So again, think about it in terms of, like either the army or the police. When someone calls out for maybe a crime, the local bobby will be there. They'll take notes, they'll investigate, and then it may now require a specialist. Mm-hmm. It could be someone involved in drugs or terrorism or whatever. And that's what we call our adaptive or acquired immune system. Mm-hmm. And what's really important about this adaptive immune system is that it's evolutionary advance. Mm-hmm. So lower animals or invertebrates, like flies and similar organisms, don't actually have this adaptive immune system. This adaptive immune system is actually a real difference in evolution. And so only higher organisms have what we call this adaptive immune system. And the molecules involved in this adaptive immune system, which people have heard are antibodies. Mm-hmm. These are soluble proteins that really are important in terms of providing protection. Another important cell that's part of the adaptive immune system are our T cells. So these two cells, the B cells and T cells, are really important in our adaptive, and they're very, very specific. And what I mean by being specific is that somewhere else around the world will be exposed to a different array of molecules, their environment. So their adaptive immune system will adapt to that environment. Whereas an adaptive immune system in the UK will be adapted to the environment or the microbes that are around. And we're well aware of this. There are stories. Yeah. When we look at, Christopher Columbus and the talk of going to new worlds, where he would bring, and his crew would bring diseases that would cause harm. The problem is, in those countries, their immune system has actually not met those foreign, organisms. So their adaptive immune system is only adapted to their environment.
Yeah. So in this environment in which we are, then, so what are the most common challenges faced by a population group, say like the African and Caribbean population group, for maintaining their immune system health? Then,
so one of the key factors about our immune system is its general health. Okay, so we know that diet, nutrition is important. We know, and I can come further on this, we know that sleep is really important. We know the impact of stress. Stress produces various factors that can actually inhibit your immune system. They're called corticosteroids. And so you find, and people may be aware of this, at certain seasons or certain periods of time where people are incredibly stressed, they may get cold sores. That's the chickenpox virus. So normally your immune system is keeping that at bay. But in individuals, or some individuals, when they get incredibly stressed, you find, for example, that the chickenpox sore can come back. So what that says is that our immune system is always working all the time. And so from a population standpoint of view, it's really important to have general health, diet, important to have a sleep, and it's general goodness. And another factor that we know impacts general immune health is exercise. Exercise is incredibly important. And another factor which we cannot escape is age.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the things that's really important, and I have another slide, is about, so if we got this immune system, why is it that sometimes viruses can cause harm? Because our immune system is immense. So here's why why viruses can make you ill. So how viruses work, right, is, I want to make sure I've got some notes that I can refer to. So how viruses work is the following. So viruses, they can't grow outside of cells or the human body. So what they need to do is they get inside a cell and they use the cell machinery to make more of itself, causes destruction, and then goes to other cells. The analogy here is, someone coming and burgling your house, coming in, ransacking it, then going to another house, ransacking it. Okay? So what really prevents this is our immune system. One of them, as I've said, is antibodies. And as you can hopefully see on this slide, what antibodies do is they coat the virus and then prevent the virus from getting in. It's a bit like if you've got bodyguards at or security at a club, you can't get in the club. They're there and they block. Yeah. Okay? But another cell that's important, and I think is really key to mention, because we often just talk about antibodies, there's another cell called T cells. Because what happens when a virus does get inside a cell? These soluble proteins, these antibodies can't go inside the cell. So another part of our immune system, known as T cells, will actually destroy viral-infected cells. So we know that antibodies and these T cells are really important. And so from a population standpoint of view, in terms of immune health, it's really important that we can make both these antibodies and make these T cells. Okay?
Good. So having said that, then, how does the double dose vaccine impact our immune system?
So one of the things, and this is a really good question, is related to how the immune system works. And I really, this is really good because I just made some slides and this kind of comes together. So one of the things that the immune system does, and which is one of the reasons why I actually got into this many years ago, is the immune system has what's called immunological memory, because it will remember the response that it makes. So in this slide, I've used the example of, again, these antibodies. So when the body is first challenged by a microbe, a virus or a bacteria, the body's response is low and is slow. I'm going to come back to that because this is really important around immune health fitness. It takes a while to make an immune response, and various factors that I've mentioned, like diet, good health, exercise, sleep, age, will impact on how quickly you will generate an immune response. We know, for example, obesity can impact on immune health. But what happens is once you see this particular microbe on repeated occasion, your immune system does something, and I'm hoping pictorially folks can see this. Mm-hmm. The response is quicker and greater. You have what's called immunological memory. It's a bit like, imagine when you go to school for the first time. It takes you a bit longer the very first time. But upon subsequently going to your school, you can then do it with your eyes shut. You know the shortcut, you get there. That's important. This is what the body does. It has this lifelong protection. And there's evidence to suggest that in certain circumstances, this immunological memory can last up to years. Okay? Now, there's a problem with this. And this is a question why sometimes we need vaccines. It's because what happens is that viruses and bacteria, as I mentioned on this slide, grow very quickly. So you saw the way how a virus causes destruction. So the problem comes is that you've not been able to generate an immune response quick enough to combat the growth of the microbe or the virus. Okay, so that's that balance. And that relates to immune fitness. Okay, so in certain circumstances, not all, one might need a vaccine, because what vaccines do is they actually are, giving the immune system that blueprint. It's training your immune system. So it makes those antibodies, it makes those T cells. So once you encounter that microbe or that virus, you've already got that. You've already got your cells and they can deal with it. It's a bit like revision, isn't it? If you are going to do an exam and you've not revised anything, you'll come in cold and you'll go, oh my gosh. Whereas if you've revised and you've studied, the question comes along, you go, yeah, I can deal with this. So that's why we sometimes need vaccines. But the bigger question is, we got to have immune health in order that we can generate a real, what I call protective immunity, because that's really important. And so this is the question you raised, Rudy, is that what factors can impact on the health of our immune system? So, and this then leads to the point when we talk specifically about COVID, because the ideas that people have talked about is, can I just get infected naturally? And I think this is what people mean by, can I just be exposed to COVID? What's the risk compared to a vaccine? And I don't want to just speak about COVID. I want to speak about in general, when one gets infected, and how does your body deal with it?
Flu is a good
flu, for example. One of the key factors we know is nutrition and diet. Diet is so important. So we know vitamins are key. Vitamin C is an antioxidant found in vegetables and fruits, very important. Vitamin E, again, is another antioxidant found in spinach and broccoli and nuts, again, really important. B6 is actually an essential vitamin. You find that in bananas. At high levels, it's found actually, if anyone's interested, in chickpeas. And then there's vitamin D, which we know is incredibly important. I should say the daily dose, and I know the NHS England and others have commented on this, is 10 micrograms or 400 units. And importantly, those that are listening, you want to get vitamin D3. Okay. Now, there's other important minerals like iron, like zinc. That's really key. Now, what's really important about having an important balanced nutrition and diet, Rudy, is that it provides the basis of immune health. So it's really important that we have, a good, well-balanced diet. Now, the problem comes that some people may say, well, look, what if I take just vitamins to deal with a virus or whatever? The difficulty is that you already need to be of reasonable immune fitness first. Because by the time the virus is inside your body, you want to now make what's called an immune response. And in order to make an immune response, you need to make sure you've got, all the players ready.
So how do people then understand their own level of immune system fitness?
So one of the things, people, often will recognize that that they say, well, Donald, I get flu quite often, and one of the things people can easily do is to go to their GP and get a blood test, which will measure a whole host of parameters.
So that's a good starting point in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. So you can see what your immune fitness, but there's other things that you can do. I think people don't recognize sleep is really an important factor, because we produce soluble factors all the time in our bodies, and some of them can be, like stress, like corticosteroids, can be harmful to our immune system. So what sleep provides, it has a lower level of these soluble factors, and therefore it can actually allow your immune system, time to develop. Because one of the things, Rudy, that's really important in having, a really good diet is, I've said that you make T cells, you make antibodies. Remember, you're making protein, right? So the body is making stuff. It's making stuff, i.e. protein. And so amino acids. So you need the food. You need food, you need the nutrients to make these antibodies, to make your T cells. So making an immune response is quite energy demanding. And no doubt we've all had had an infection, had flu. And sometimes, for many of us, we feel kind of tired. Part of that tiredness is your body, your immune system is using all the energy to actually fight that infection. It's a very energy demanding system. So that's really important. And so sometimes we see, where someone is malnourished, the impact is associated with being immunocompromised, being more easily infected. So that's really key. Age, we know age has an impact. That's seen with COVID, but also seen with flu. Okay, so but don't, because you are 70 or 80, feel, oh my gosh, it's over. There's more centenarians than ever before. And here's a really interesting study by a colleague of mine, Professor Janet Lord, at Birmingham University in the Midlands. And this is a really interesting study about exercise. So she studied older folks who have been exercise or do regular exercise compared to older folks who do very little. And she found, measuring certain parameters that define immune fitness, that those older individuals that exercise had a higher immunological fitness. And I know recently she's has produced videos for older individuals to actually, develop more exercise. And they're quite simple exercise of actually doing steps, doing very simple, exercise. And doing that is known. The other aspect of our immune system that's really important is general health and general well-being. And there's a question, I remember we were talking, Rudy, off air, is the impact of COVID on our immune system. But I want to take it back in that, how does infection in general affect not just our immune system, our bodies? So when we get infected, we often see that there's a rise of blood glucose. That happens in a large number of infections, particularly viral infections. So blood glucose rises. And one of the reasons why blood glucose is rising is the fact that your cells will need the glucose. It needs glucose for energy. So what happens is that blood glucose will rise. What that will do is you'll see an increase in insulin, because insulin is the only hormone that allows the cell to take in the glucose. Okay, without insulin, you can't absorb in the glucose. And that's the problem that's seen with diabetes. So what happens is that viruses and COVID in particular, it causes a disbalance of one's physiology. And we see this with individuals who are diabetic, or those that may have underlying health issues that are unaware. And this is what COVID and other diseases have, kind of exacerbate. So here's the story, and it's a really interesting story. Because folks may be slightly diabetic or others, blood glucose shoots up. The problem comes is your cells now want to expand to deal with that present virus. Insulin levels aren't rising sufficiently enough to get the cells to take in the glucose. So the cell will find an alternative route to make energy. That alternative route, unfortunately, for our mammalian cells, the byproduct is acid. And to think about it, think about it as the stitch. The stitch that you get, when you're running fast, and sometimes if, I've got a stitch, that stitch is the acid that's produced. That's the byproduct. Not to think too technically, that's what we call anaerobic respiration. We're aerobes, so we use aerobic respiration, which is glucose. So the cell will say, hold on, I've got to fight this virus. I've got to now I've got to expand. I've got to deal with this virus. Hold on, insulin is not around. So I will use an alternative source, okay, to make more cells to make energy. The byproduct of that is acid. And you may get ketoacidosis and other factors. And that's what can cause real problems. In fact, I was speaking to a nurse only recently, and this is related to COVID, is that she was telling me that she was regularly calling her diabetic patients and telling them to really monitor their glucose level. So, and that's what we've seen in most cases, Rudy. What we've seen, and this nurse and the other diabetic nurse I've been speaking to said, Donald, in most cases that we've seen is that diabetes is, many of our patients, we've controlled it. They take insulin 2 or 3 times a day, no problem. COVID comes along, cause a massive disbalance to their pathophysiology. And some patients now have to take insulin literally every 2 or 3 hours because that's what's caused the problem. And so all of these factors, have an impact on one's general health and health of their immune system.
So it almost suggests that we have to have a rethink our whole sort of community health, and I know public health as a whole is obviously being rethought, but as a community, we need a lot more sessions on just general health care as it relates to our immune system.
Yeah, and this is in terms of whether it relates to vaccines to boost one specific immune system, or we're just talking here, and I'm talking really just about immune fitness.
Yeah.
Whereby one's sleep deprivation is with less stress, exercise. I read a report recently. I hope I've got the name right. There's a group I was looking online, Black Women Can Run or something like that. And apologies if I've got it wrong, but they were commenting. They run in pairs, and they were commenting they want to see more Black women or more Black people in generally run, because that's will help. Because also, when you run and you have endorphins, and that general wellness is known to be an immune booster. Yeah. Similarly, and the idea of depression, etc., can also dampen one immune system
Yeah.
as well.
So the remedies are very general, aren't they?
Yeah,
They are general. And years ago, they used to say to us, how the how the legs go, the heart goes, or something.
yeah.
Going back to your point, the importance of exercise.
No, I think more and more people are recognizing the importance of exercise and even going out. And what we've realized, isn't it, with COVID, the impact it has on our health and well-being by being locked up. So it's important that we, try and exercise and look well, because that's partly what the evidence suggests in terms of COVID and other disease, where we're seeing that, disparity, and that disparity is associated with, some underlying conditions.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I mean, you've given us quite a comprehensive overview, but I think if you could just go back again, and just talk us through that importance point around the immune system fitness. I think that's such an important point, and maybe if you could go through that again, because there seems to be that stage in terms of we've got to understand where we are, because we haven't had to look into things in this detail.
The immune fitness is a really important one, because you're right, because how our immune system works, and the benefit is that, as I said before, upon repeated exposure to a microbe, your body will make an appropriate response. And let's talk specifically of COVID. What we see in both cases is that an individual, can make an immune response to COVID. Okay, no doubt about that. But that response will vary, and the variation of that response, and similar to flu, but let's speak specifically for COVID, Rudy, will vary. And that varied immune response is in fact related to your immune fitness to a certain degree. And that's why, for example, COVID, you see the disparity, particularly in the second wave, with older individuals. Okay, older individuals have a generally weaker immune response. It's not completely gone. They have a weaker immune response, but what it is, the weakness relates, Rudy, is to how they can generate that immune response. That immune response in older individuals can sometimes take longer, but that response is also weaker. And the problem, as I said, is that balance. Yeah. So if you get infected by a virus, the virus will replicate. And if your immune system isn't fit enough, you're making antibodies, you are slowly making an immune response. By that time, it might be too late. For some individuals who get infected, they will develop an antibody response sufficient enough to destroy the virus. Now, that depends on your immune fitness. That's what we're seeing, because we're seeing younger folks sadly having issues because potentially they may not be as immune fit as they, believe they are.
Yeah, and you kind of said a blood test is a marker.
Yeah.
For us to actually maybe understand where we are, maybe.
Yeah, just to see where you are. What's this status? Where are we in terms of our immune fitness? And partly and it's with any other aspect, Rudy, in terms of body's health, is that when we stress it or strain it, anything that's underlying that we're not aware of can kick into place. Yeah. I mean, look at the tragic situation of, Ericsson, the Danish footballer. All intents and purposes, he was incredibly fit. Yeah. But as soon as he strained his body in a particular manner, he had an underlying issue that now became apparent. And that's what we can see with some infection, and we're seeing that with COVID.
Yes.
And the other point around immune fitness is you may generate an immune response, and this comes to your questions about booster. And this is seen not just with the natural infection, but also with vaccine infection, is that the response you make will, over time, become slower. The response you make. So when you make an immune response, bang, particularly after you've seen the virus or repeatedly with the vaccine. But over time, the level of antibodies will slowly decrease. So that duration of how it slows down will also depend on how relatively fit you are as well. So that's equally important.
Right, okay. So as we come to the end of this dialogue then, Donald, you've been most insightful as usual.
No, thank you, Rudy. Thank you.
What is the key message for the community as we end this that gives a sense of the way forward with a certain level of confidence, and understanding? Because it's the challenge that we have, as you know, is the understanding.
Yeah.
Everyone's an individual; they're different, but there are some benchmarks that you've indicated.
Yeah, I think there are. You're right, Rudy. There are some benchmarks, and one of them, I think, more than ever before, it's about prevention, but equally, it's really about being informed. And I think there are many members in our community now who are incredibly knowledgeable about such information. I know various folks, and I know you do, Rudy, who are nutritionalists, who are dietitians, I believe is the correct pronunciation. And therefore, can provide appropriate information. There's also the area of of general health, but also around health inequalities that exist in our community. So once with COVID slowing down and we're starting to get back to some normality, what COVID highlighted are those health inequalities. They're the things that, as a community now, we really need to address.
Absolutely. So you raised a good point in terms of the structural health inequalities that have always existed. That's the reality, and the response now is even more important in terms of having the right information, advice, and guidance with support as it relates to our immune system health, basically.
Indeed.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Donald.
No, thank you, Rudy. Always a pleasure to talk, and hopefully some of this information, folks can find useful. And the best thing is, to make sure you get the right information, so one can make an informed choice and be aware of their immune health. And I think, and this is not about about whether you take the vaccine or not. I think what COVID has highlighted is the importance of our immune system.
Yeah.
So in the past, we may have been looking at focusing on diabetes, and rightly so, because of what it's done in our, impact in our community. We may have focused on blood pressure because, again, but another area that we also now need to look at in our community is, is our immune system, fitness.
Yeah, and the link, stress and mental health, all of those areas. Great. Thank you very much for that.
No, thank you.
People can always go to nhs.uk for more information. Just Google that, and there's a lot. They'll be able to get a lot more information on immune system health.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and take care.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye. And good night all.